group faded into background and the center light was captured by Horkheimer, who brought together all these representative thinkers and formed a new inner circle, which was known as Frankfurt School. Now, I just mentioned sometimes back that what were those backgrounds that led to the development of the Frankfurt School. The first important development was that they were dissatisfied with the Marxist prescription that the proletariat revolution will take place and it will lead to the establishment of a socialist society. This did not happen. So they were inquiring into the reasons why the Marxist notion of revolution or the analysis of the Marxist notion of contradiction in the society based on economic criteria has failed. And they were worried that why in the Europe revolution could not take place and why the proletariat they became so complacent uh, with the modern industrial society that they were not actually aware of their sufferings, they were not actually thinking of bringing about revolution. And the second important was that the rise of the Nazi Germany and the rise of the Auschwitz and the type of atrocities which were perpetuated by the Nazi Germany. That also, opened their eyes towards the fallacies of economic development and progress. Because in the name of economic development and progress, whether it is the Nazi Germany or it was the Western society, they were perpetuating uh, a type of dehumanization of human beings and loss of their human essence, loss of their rationality. And that was one of the important thought or area which provoked these critical thinkers. And we will see that most of their work actually concentrate on the critique of the Western civilization and on finding the reasons why the revolution did not take place as per the Marxist prescription. Now, therefore, uh, at this point, I would like to say that Frankfurt School is not a monolithic category or a monolithic school which comprises of thinkers who think in the similar way, but on the contrary, they comprise of multiplicity of thinkers, but they are united by certain basic common ends or purpose or commitments, you can say. And each of them had their particular interest and unique intellectual strength and weaknesses. Some of the common commitments are that, first of all, they all are critical of the establishmentarian mode of thinking. That means they are all against the established mode of epistemology, established mode of theories, and they have said that we cannot have a foundationalist understanding of our society and its problem by using only certain approaches or using only certain fixed methods, which I will uh, deal with them in a few moments of time. And second, uh, none of these critical thinkers they associated freedom with any system, collectivity, or tradition. So these were some of the common commitments or objectives which actually bonded these critical thinkers together. Otherwise, they were different in many respects, and there is lots of shades of differences between them. And in such a limited span of time, it is not possible to go into all the differences. Therefore, I will highlight some of the features of the critical theory and why it is important in the present time. Now, the word critical theory was actually coined only in 1937, though the Frankfurt School was established much earlier, but the critical theory as a term was coined in 1937. And as I've just said, that it is critical of all perennial philosophy. And especially, it talked about two important culprits. One is a phenomenology, and second is a positivism. Because they believe that both these approaches are ahistorical in nature and they eliminate genuine subjectivity. For example, positivism, they use the methods of natural sciences to study society which is a very limited approach, and it cannot help in understanding various forms of exploitation and various forms of other injustices in the society. The next important feature is it is interdisciplinary in nature. I will explain how and why it is interdisciplinary in nature. And because if you have to understand exploitation and domination in the society, you have to go into the social, economic, psychological, and cultural dimensions to understand the reasons behind and the factors responsible uh, for the exploitation. And alienation and reification were two other important ideas or the principles of critical theory. Alienation is nothing but it is a psychological after effects in a capitalist society based on division of labor. And we know that how alienation is rampant in the modern society in the form of alienation of the worker from his own work, from himself, from the consumers, from the product he is consuming, from the society, from his fellow beings. So there are multiple levels of alienation in the society, and how that is leading to increased violence and suicidal tendencies in the society. And then reification. Reification is a tendency to use other people as instruments to satisfy one's own end. And reification is a concept which is actually responsible for the market-based exploitation in the society, which is based on instrumental rationality. But here I would like to point out that critical theory is not simply a criticism of the Western civilization or modernity, but it is also aimed at providing an alternative to the society. So, uh, therefore, uh, critical theory is also a critical method. It is a research paradigm. It is a research program. Critical theory has questioned some of the basic trends which were prevalent in the society at that time also, and it is also present now. It questioned the bureaucratically administered society, which represses all resistance, and it obliterates genuine individuality and generating personality which are authoritarian in nature. And because of this type of authoritarian tendencies and bureaucratically organized mass society, there is rise of conformity rather than autonomy. Because though we feel that we are autonomous and enjoying our rights and privileges, but actually we are following the rules and norms which are dictated either by media or by the state or by somebody else, and we are merely uh, conforming to it. Next important is the new culture industry. The new culture industry in the form of mass media has actually converted culture into an industry. Earlier, culture was a source of enthusiasm, it was a source for spiritual emancipation, it was a source of joy, but now it has been converted into an industry. It is now converted into commodity where commodities are sold just for earning profits, and for earning profits, they can stoop to any low level to sell their products. Now, Adorno had highlighted that when we talk about critical research, we have to highlight the non-identity, because it is not simply explaining the dominance or the exploitation taking place in the society, but also highlighting the non-identities. That is, those who are marginalized, those who are at the borders of the society, so that the tension is heightened between the individual and the society. Critical theory have since beginning have tried to develop their own aims, objectives, methods of doing research, and also explanation which are different from the natural and other traditional form of doing research. They say that critical theory is a form of social inquiry, and for that social inquiry we have to combine philosophy with practice. We have to combine structure with agency. We have to combine objectivity with subjectivity. We have to combine private with public sphere. And all these are nothing but challenging the traditional understanding of society or the traditional epistemology. It has rejected, therefore, all the traditional separation between facts and values, because By making a separation between facts and values, we are not able to understand the practice, the basis, the context which forms the basis for critical analysis. They want to awaken the individual from the slumber which has taken place because of the developments in the capitalist society, because of the influence of consumerism, because of the influence of mass media. And therefore, it is anti-positivist because it believes that reality cannot be understood by adopting a very narrow approach based on methods and techniques only. Because reality is based on many ideological roots. And if you want to understand domination, if you want to understand human emancipation, you have to study the society, you have to study the ideas, ideology, and for that, positivism is ill-equipped. Therefore, critical theory confronted the world with three ideals: solidarity, resistance, and freedom. One of the very important point which was highlighted by the critical theorist was the type of thinking which the people were having in the modern society, and that thinking was actually nothing but it is mechanical way of understanding things. Creativity has been lost, it has been replaced by mechanical understanding of things. Ethical reflection is vanishing, and aesthetic enjoyment is becoming standardized. So, the basic summary is that from the creative thinking, our imagination, our thinking has been reduced to a conformist sort of thinking where there is no imagination, where there is no innovation. Now, these ideas have been widely used to reconfigure relations of family, sexuality, and education. Because this critical theory constructs provided those concepts which can help in developing consensus, mutuality in place of cruelty and competition. Therefore, it generated new insights on race, family, gender, caste, as well as post-colonial world. So, in terms of contemporary society, the three major criticisms which critical theorists aimed at: first, the control of language to perpetuate power structures, how the language is used to perpetuate power structures in the society, which appears to be neutral and objective in the first sense. Second, the role of mass media in building sensitivity to repression, how the mass media is making us conformist, is making us to think in a particular way, and how that is preventing the revolutionary urges to develop in the youth or in the people amongst the different society. And the next is the blind reliance on scientific method and uncritical acceptance of empirical finding. How I will explain that the ontological and epistemological underpinnings of different types of research, whether it is positivist research or whether it is critical research, are different. And as a researcher, we have to understand that the ontological understanding of the world and the epistemological understanding of the world has to be different in two types of research. Natural science-based research, or where we use the scientific methods for doing research, cannot help in understanding the reasons for exploitation, the social and ideological hidden causes behind the exploitation. These methods, the developments or events can be understood only by interpretative approaches, where we can use various type of qualitative methods to understand how the relations, how the different forms of structures and institutions in the society are actually garbed in various power relations, and how they can be understood, how the sufferers can be made to realize that they are suffering. Because one of the important development in the present new liberal society is that though we all are suffering, many classes in our society are suffering, but we are not aware about that we are suffering. We are not aware about that, and we don't know actually how to raise our voices against that. So in the present time, this issue has to be addressed by the critical theory, or those who want to do research on uh, uh, on these issues. Now, Habermas has actually explained that how we can use democracy in a much more communicative manner, in a consensual manner, to address some of the problems of the capitalist society. Now, Adorno and Max Horkheimer have argued that how instrumental rationality, how autonomous self-interest of human beings have legitimated capitalist exploitation. And in his very important book, that is Dialectics of Enlightenment, he has mentioned that how individuals who consider themselves as free and rational are actually not free. They are actually reconciled to a system where we have to make routinous and conformist choice, where our aspirations are materialistic and unimaginative, because we are guided by materialism and consumerism in the society. So our imaginations, our aspirations are also, they are materialistic in nature, they are not aesthetic in nature, they are not cultural in nature. Similarly, Herbert Marcuse in the One Dimensional Man, in his book One Dimensional Mind, has argued that how the modern society, the Western capitalist society, has produced a one dimensional nature of man, which is nothing but man as rational producer and consumer. Marcuse had argued for new points of dialectics or new points of contradiction. He has argued that earlier the contradictions were understood in terms of economics, in terms of material factors, which help in understanding why the contradiction will take place between the proletariat and the capitalist. But now, because of the changes in the modern society, or because of the advent of media, now the point of contradiction will be culture or ideology, because the modern capitalist society has generated lots of free time. It has given lots of welfare measures to the proletariat, and also it has generated lots of free time, and that free time is actually meant for developing ourselves aesthetically and spiritually. But on the contrary, the modern society has considered these developments, or these form of the individual development, that is aesthetic and moral development, as non-productive and inefficient. Therefore, there is a conflict. There is a conflict between our human instincts, our desires, our requirements for human emancipation, and the dictates of the modern capitalist society. And Marcuse argues that this is the point of contradiction, which he termed as the return of the repressed, a reassertion of our instinctual need for sensuous and aesthetic gratification. Now, uh, I have talked a lot about the features of the critical theory. Now, I would like to shed some light on the significance of critical theory. Now, what are the significance of critical theory? First of all, I would say that the first generation of critical theorists have impacted a major students' movement in the 1960s, and the intellectuals associated with that movement have strongly benefited or motivated by the ideas of the first generation critical theorists. Now, uh, as I've just said, that the modern capitalist society has provided ample time and leisure to think about our spiritual and to think about our aesthetic development. And because the modern capitalist society had made many adjustments with the rise of the social democracy, had given higher wages to the workers, and also it has increased many welfare measures for the workers. Now, this has somehow led to the suppression of the revolutionary instinct of the proletariat, because now they are getting higher wages and their conditions have improved. So they were now not talking about revolution. Now, this you can say suppression of economic aspect of revolution, or you can say of change, was replaced by another demand that was cultural in nature. So now, when you are economically well off, now you are talking about identity. So we find that there was a shift from the economic contradiction to contradiction based on culture, where now the people are talking about the issues of identity. and the issues of different lifestyle, the issues of different life patterns, etc. But you know that with the receding of the welfare state, with the rise of neoliberalism, with the retreat of paternalism, and with the rise of income inequalities, there was again a shift from culture to economy as new site of struggle. The altered globalization movements reveal it that now the protest movements are a complex articulation of economic, cultural, and environmental concerns. Now, Adorno, Horkheimer, and Marcuse, they have therefore advanced their critique against capitalism from the standpoint view of culture. Now, they have criticized the instrumental rationality, how it leads to dehumanization of human beings, leads to emptiness of human beings because we consider other human beings as instruments to satisfy our ends. We consider nature to be dominated and exploited, and that has led to many evils in the society. And the critique of cultural industry, how the culture has been converted into a commodity and industry to be exploited for profit, and art is no more a source of emancipation. Art is now based on the utility or promotion of maximum pleasure and reduction of pain. This has led to emptiness of individual, deformation of individual, dehumanization of individual. Therefore, critical theorists have promised and they have argued and questioned that why the different established notions of development have failed to live up to the expectations of human beings. They have questioned the Enlightenment principles, and they have argued that it promised to provide a equal, a just world for the people, but it could not help in establishing that. Even Marxism could not help in establishing a just society, as per the precepts of Karl Marx. Even the Western liberalism could not help in establishing a just society. So, why, even after so much of grand theories and grand meta narratives, the human society is still suffering, and that what makes the critical theory relevant in the present time also. Now, some of the other areas where I will touch only briefly, where critical theory has impacted and it has been of a lot of significance, has been in the area related to feminism. Now, C. Wright Mills, in his work, The Sociological Imagination, have argued that how women have used these precepts of critical theory to actually transfer the issue of domestic violence or spousal abuse or incestual problem from the private sphere to the public sphere. How the gays and the lesbians have advocated for legislation against hate crimes, and how it has promoted and motivated protest against racialism. Therefore, uh, critical theory have influenced number of movements, number of theories across the world since its beginning and association with the Frankfurt School. So there are number of traditions, or you can say number of critical traditions who have benefited from the original precepts of critical theory, though they also vary in a number of ways, and they have adopted in terms of the substance of emancipation, in terms of the context. Now, another very important area where critical theorists have actually pointed, and it is of great significance, is the role of power in our social relations. Luke has underlined, has delineated how power is hidden in our various social structures, institutions, in our languages, in our day-to-day activities in the society, and how these different dominant sources of power, though they exercise a great dominance on our lives, but they are hidden. They are not explicit, they are implicit, they are latent, and how they promote those cultural practices which makes the individual realize that these sources of power are natural, they are normal, and they actually accept them in their everyday life as completely normal in nature. They do not question them. So Luke argues that we have to not only study social relations in terms of the power relation, but we have also to understand how beneath the various layers the power is hidden and how it is being exercised through various processes. Like one of the processes, process of socialization. One of them is by education, how they are used in a very notorious manner to socialize an individual towards a particular thing which is considered as normal, though it is not normal, it is considered a distinct example of an unequal power relation. For example, till now, we know that many of the women, they consider that their husband is the incarnation of God. Now, this is, a prevalent, a, a cultural belief, or you can say a traditional way of thinking. But you know that this belief and idea has been socialized into the minds of the women since their childhood, and therefore they consider it as normal and completely okay. Similarly, one of the researcher, he actually made his research on domestic violence, and he interviewed many women, and he asked a question that when when your husband beat you, how do you take it? Then most of the women, he was very surprised that most of the women, more than 50% of the women, they replied that beating wife is a normal phenomena because husband love their wife and they have a right to beat them also. So such type of, cultural beliefs or traditional beliefs, they are ingrained in our social system, ingrained in our socialization process, and that leads to uh, 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 that leads them to appear as normal, as fact, as rational in nature, though they are completely irrational, completely they are unjust in nature, they are exploitative in nature. So now at the last, I will come to the research dimensions. Now, we have to understand that critical theory is not simply a theory, but it is a research program or a research tradition of a distinctive critical type based on certain ontological and epistemological considerations. Second, critical theory has to be understood as a method. It is a method. It is not simply norms. It is a connection of philosophy with practice. And third important thing is that it is a very important means of challenging the present injustices or imbalances of power that mark the economy, the state, the public sphere, the law, and the global life. So, before doing critical research, we have to realize or remember certain points. The first point is that concepts are socially constructed. So, when we talk about problems, dominations, or we understand somebody's lived experience, we have to understand that it is socially constructed, culturally constructed, and we have to use interpretive positivist approach not help nations in the society. Second is we have to link values with the facts, theory with the practice, structure with the agency, subjectivity with the objectivity, structure, private sphere with the public sphere. Because in fact, uh, critical theories have raised their voice against these type of binaries, because these binaries are a form of exploitation in the society. Because when we say private and public sphere, we give more importance to the public sphere over the private sphere. So these binaries are no longer needed. They need to be erased to make our research more comprehensive. There are multiple methods to do critical research, and there is no one single method. It can be ethnography, it can be critical ethnography, participant observation, interviews, focus groups, then critical discourse analysis, etc. So what is first of all required is that you have to identify the area of dominance, exploitation, whether it is gender structure of society, whether it is economic policies, whether it is exploitation of labor, whether it is environmental degradation or casteist nature of society, rising violence in or suicides in the society, you have to understand the social groups or the social experiences or social collectivities that you want to study. And then you have to focus on the experiences of that group. And the differences and borders of that group have to be assumed. Past and present events have to be considered in all stages of research. Then, the questions asked during the research are as important as the answer which are discovered. Research should not be ranked, and researchers' assumptions and biases are part of the research problem. They have to be taken into consideration because when we are doing interpretations, so our own subjectivity, our own biases will form part, may come into the research. And very important thing is that researcher and participants have to understand themselves as partners where they gain knowledge through discovery and understanding. Now, I was talking about the ontological and epistemological basis of critical research. Now, what is the ontological basis and why it is important? Ontological and epistemological bases are important because they determine what type of theories we are going to use. They will determine what type of methods of research we are going to use. And therefore, you have to understand that the ontology of critical research is what is that reality is a product of power relations. It is produced through these tensions between social, economic, cultural, psychological, historical, and many other aspects. And epistemology means how we can know that. We can know that through understanding the point that knowledge is political and value driven. And we can know that through combining facts with values and by adopting the standpoint approaches, as we do in the case of feminist research. So, at the end, we have to remember three important points which are associated with critical research. The first is critique, second is the social justice, and third is transformative. So, any research can be considered a critical research if it is aimed at criticizing the present injustices or present uh, theories or challenging the present narratives. And second is that it aims at establishing social justice. Therefore, I would like to quote Max Horkheimer at this point, who say that a critical theory or a critical research is one which is practical, which is normative, which is explanatory in nature. Explanatory means it should explain the the social malices or problems in the society, the actors who are involved in the domination, the causes behind it, and these explanations have to be substantiated by certain norms. So therefore, it is normative in nature. Practical means it should provide a practical solution to those problems. How a person can come out of those sufferings, how he can be alerted to those sufferings, how he can become aware of the sufferings, how he can give words to those sufferings. So these are some of the things which are practical oriented, and therefore any research which has these three elements can be termed as critical. That is explanatory, normative, and the third is it has to be practical in nature. And at the last, I would like to end my discussion by quoting Karl Marx, because all the critical traditions have been primarily influenced by Karl Marx and his precepts, who say the philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. So, the objective of critical research is to change the world, to make the world a better place for the human beings to live in, to work for human emancipation, freedom, real democracy, consensus, then cooperation, and to build a better world in which we all can live in. So, thank you very much for a patient hearing. Thank you once again, organizers. Thank you, everyone.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम, आपने इतना सारगर्भित वक्तव्य दिया जो फ्रैंकफर्ट स्कूल के थ्योरी के ऊपर आपने जो बातें की, निश्चित ही हमारे जो है प्रतिभागी और हमसे हमसे जुड़े हुए जो लोग हैं और जो फेसबुक लाइव पे इसे देख रहे हैं, वो लोग ज़रूर ही लाभान्वित हुए होंगे। और आपने मैम इतना अपना कीमती समय निकाल करके आपने हमें समय दिया, तो मैम आपका बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू, आपको भी थैंक यू,
जी,
धन्यवाद।
जी। हाँ, और इस कड़ी में आज के हमारे जो है कि तीसरे वक्ता हमने प्रोफ़ेसर रामप्रकाश द्विवेदी सर को जो सुना था, हम अभी प्रोफ़ेसर सोनाली सिंह मैम को सुन रहे थे, जो काशी हिंदू विश्वविद्यालय के बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी के डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल साइंस में प्रोफ़ेसर हैं। अब हमारे जो तीसरे और इस वेबिनार के जो अंतिम वक्ता हैं डॉक्टर धनंजय राय सर, सेंटर फॉर गांधीयन थॉट एंड पीस स्टडीज, सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ गुजरात, गांधीनगर। तो मैं आमंत्रित करता हूँ, आई इनवाइट टू डॉक्टर धनंजय राय सर कि वो अपना जो है कि व्याख्यान दें। धनंजय राय सर, सुन पा रहे हैं सर? थैंक यू मैम। सुन पा रहे हैं सर? हेलो, हेलो सर, सुन पा रहे हैं आप हमें? सर, सुन पा रहे हैं हमें? अ, योगेश जी, सर की माइक को अनम्यूट किया जाए।
सर अनम्यूट।
योगेश जी, सर सुन पा रहे हैं?
हेलो,
हाँ सर, हेलो।
हेलो, आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं?
जी सर, आपकी आवाज आ तो रही है लेकिन सर बहुत कम आ रही है सर। हेलो
अच्छा, अब आ रही है? अब ठीक आ रही है?
सर, थोड़ा और जो है कि आवाज आपकी बहुत कम आ रही है सर।
अभी ठीक है
जी सर,
या
जी
अभी
सर,
भी कम है?
जी सर, अब ठीक है, अब आप सुन पा रहे हैं सर आपको।
थैंक यू, थैंक
जी,
यू सो मच।
वेलकम।
थैंक यू फॉर दिस, थैंक यू फॉर invitation and thank you for invitation and I'll be speaking on concept of identity and multiculturalism. And I think concept of identity has been a very important tool in political theory, political science, and this is one of the important ways through which we have uh, understood the contemporary development in political theory. So what I will do that that various debates of multiculturalism and how multiculturalism is important in to understand the various facets of political theory. Uh, there was a crisis of liberal political theory and the idea of identity. And let me start with the idea of identity in idea of identity in identity has been influenced by Hegelian notion and Hegel. And Hegel has been very important person, and he theorized identity in the context of identity and non-identity. If you have to understand identity, you have to understand non-identity. So identity is a kind of dialectical symbol. Identity is a kind of unity of contradictions. So two opposites are together to make sense of identity. So identity for Hegel is identity and non-identity. So most of the identitarian and identity debates in contemporary time and political theory has been influenced by Hegelian notion. So there was a crisis of liberal political theory, and the crisis of liberal political theory was a peculiar because of primarily three factors were identified that there is a crisis in liberal political theory. And these crises were as follows. One is atomism, that individual has nothing to do with society and culture. That was one of the important point. Second point was individualism, atomism and individualism. And third was dominance of dominant. There is a dominance of dominant through the theory of benign neglect. Benign neglect was a very important tool in liberal political theory, which means that state will not interfere in your life and you are free the way you would like to operate in a political system or in a society. So state has adopted the policy of benign neglect. This has been problematized in contemporary political theory, that even there is a policy of benign neglect, there is a dominance of dominant. So these three are important factors, three important features of crisis of liberal political theory. Vis-a-vis culture, and the culture was very important factor that liberalism has not taken cognizance of or significance of culture. So there were two response. There were many response. There were many response. But we are talking about multiculturalism. There were two important response. The first response was multiculturalism, and the second was communitarianism. We will use both formulation together. There is subtle difference between multiculturalism and communitarianism. The difference is as follows. Multiculturalism seeks solution within liberalism, and communitarianism seeks solution beyond liberalism. But most of the time, the term may be interchangeable because they take culture as an important factor of human being. So, what was the response of multiculturalism or communitarianism against the prevalence of atomism, individualism, and benign neglect, which gave importance to dominate of dominant? These were the three important failures of liberal political theory. So they attempted to respond diversity, is a response to diversity. And they say that in place of benign neglect, we are happy with the salad ball or glorious mosaic. So it is important to be a salad ball or glorious mosaic than benign neglect. Ethnic diversity was made very important factor. So most important concern, and the concerns were not invalid. They were very important concerns. If you look at the various countries from continental Europe to America to Asia to South Asia, you find that the dominance of dominant is there. Even we many times most of the countries accept the policy of secularism, but in essence they are not secular countries. There is a prevalence of one way of or they are controlled by one of the significant one of the most powerful religion or religious discourses. So saying that the country and the society is free from religion or free from any kind of impact of religion was a mistake in liberal political theory, because in essence most of the countries were guided by the dominant religion, though they were using the principle of benign neglect. So cultural minorities were the sufferers, and cultural minorities and multiculturalism said that there is a multicultural minorities, and cultural minorities has a right to preserve their languages and their distinctive customs and practice. This was the beginning of multiculturalism. And they said that differences is nurtured rather than repudiated or simply tolerated. So difference, the politics of difference, which we will see in Charles Taylor, they propose that in place of bypassing the idea of difference, it should be nurtured then repudiated. And uh, and they rejected this policy that there should be coexistence with the benign neglect. They proposed a policy which says that coexistence without subordination is important factor in a contemporary liberal political theory. Coexistence without a subordination. I'll be discussing five six thinkers, and they are important. And you will understand the serious differences in the serious contribution of each thinker, because they were the ones who shaped a contour of multiculturalism and liberal political theory, or multiculturalist political theory. Will Kimlicka is important, and multiculturalism generally is associated with one of the profound theoreticians of our time, and he has actually worked a lot, and his name is Will Kimlicka. There are two important works, which, I mean, there are many works. There are many works, and but two important works by Will Kimlicka are significant. One is Liberalism, Community and Culture, and second is Multicultural Citizenship. These two were important works. And what was his concern? Kimlicka and Will Kimlicka was trying to understand multiculturalism in the context of Canada and in general context. And he comes from Canada. So he says that what is the problem in liberalism, that they try to solve all problems through basic individual rights or human rights. But he says that there is a limitation of individual rights or human rights. Individual rights and human rights can't solve all problems, particularly problem of national minorities. We'll come to see what do we mean by, or what do you mean by him, national minorities. But he says that this is the first thing, that individual rights and the provision of human rights will not solve the problem of national minority. And first thing has to be rejection of benign neglect, that the state is acting in a benign manner. That is not happening. If you look at composition of dominant section, dominant culture, dominant religion, in all societies, you'll find the dominance of dominance. So human rights standard do not solve cultural minorities. He was asking certain questions, like there should be public funded education in the mother tongue or not. I mean, whether minorities can have public funded education in their mother tongue or not. What is the idea of traditional homeland of indigenous people? Whether there should be rights for indigenous people separately or not. What are the rights of immigrants who are seeking citizenship? A cultural integration or cultural autonomy? Human rights theory, according to Will Kimlicka, will not able to address liberal theory of minority rights. And liberal political theory, according to Kimlicka, proposes human rights, and under human rights theory, these concerns will not come, because human rights theories are limited by the principle of individual liberty, democracy, and social justice. Whereas multicultural questions are bigger than human rights questions and individual rights. And Bill Kimlicka says that there are three kinds of rights, and there are three kinds of rights which are important, which can be given to ethnic or national group. And he calls his formulation of right as differentiated rights. And differentiated rights are very important in the context of Philippine Lika. And he says that we have to have differentiated right. You cannot have a policy of benign neglect. What is the policy of, what are three kinds of rights or differentiated right he is proposing? They are as follows. One is self-government right, polyethnic rights, and special representation rights. These are the three rights, and he says that these three rights can be given to minorities. There are two types of people in Kimlicka's formulation. One is called national minorities. So self-government right can be given to national minorities, and indigenous people are considered as a, are considered as a national minority. And these rights, he says, is not available to other immigrants. And Kimlicka is very clear that self-government rights can be available only to national minorities. He is not saying that these rights can be available to immigrants who have migrated or immigrated into the particular country. For immigrants, he proposes another right, and that right is known as polyethnic rights. Polyethnic rights are very important in this formulation, and these rights are given to immigrants. What are polyethnic rights? Guaranteed financial support, legal protection for practices peculiar to some ethnic or religious group. So you have to give financial support, legal protection to migrants, immigrants, and these rights are called polyethnic rights. Since national minorities and immigrants both are in minorities, Kimlicka proposes third right, that is called special representation rights. And what is the special representation right? That both indigenous people and immigrant minorities have their mandatory representation in state bodies and institutions. So we have two types of minorities, and two types of minorities are okay. Somebody is asking to repeat some of the arguments. Self-government rights and polyethnic rights are important, and third right is special representation rights. According to Kimlicka, there are two types of minorities which we are discussing: national minorities and ethnic minorities. National minorities, of course, are those people who were previously had self-governing, or they were living there since beginning, and the state has been incorporated into a larger territory. Ethnic minorities are also those people who have come from the different countries. They don't have governing, they couldn't govern that particular country where they migrated, but nevertheless they have different ethnic identities and traditions. Thereby, Kimlicka proposed that national culture should be societal culture. There can't be the national culture. There can't be one national culture of any country, particularly liberal country. There should be societal culture. And societal culture is a national culture is a societal culture. Both are dialectically influencing each other. There can't be simple a national culture or the national culture. There has to be a national culture which has societal culture. According to Kimlicka, group differences rights are important to sustain societal culture. This is more or less Will Kimlicka is attempting to understand culture within the framework of liberal political theory, in which constitutionalism, constitution, liberal political state, politics, sovereignty, legitimacy, territory, elections, all are important. Constitutionalism, individual rights, all are important factors. Beside all those important factors, these factors which he is talking about must be added to bring the society policy as a multicultural policy. The second thinker who differs significantly from Will Kimlicka is Charles Taylor. And Charles Taylor is a very important philosopher. Very much, he combines various philosophical traditions influenced by Hegel. And Charles Taylor, in his celebrated essay *Politics of Recognition* in 1994, rejected a liberal theory of multiculturalism. He says that even in liberalism or multiculturalism theory of liberalism is not possible, is incapable of giving culture the recognition. It is not possible to give or recognize culture in liberalism because the scope is not there. And he says that there have been three phases in human history, and three phases are important. And he would, this is an interesting formulation. And if you read carefully Theory Politics of Recognition, and that celebrated essay is a very much polemic but nice edited book published by Princeton University. And he says that there have been three phases in terms of human life. There was a phase of honor. I mean, the honor was an important concept in human history. But the honor, honorable, somebody is honorable. So we find lots of concepts in, particularly in modern academia, that the term has become more important, honor and honorable. But Charles Taylor says that honor is essentially a term of feudalism. And I am honorable, it means that somebody is not honorable. So I mean that if all are honorable, then there's no meaning of honor and honorable. So this concept was there in the beginning, but honor was challenged, feudalism was collapsed. the second category had come, that is the politics of dignity. And this dignity is important according to Charles Taylor in Kant and Rousseau and Kant. Kant and Rousseau. But the problem with the dignity is that the concept of individual, I mean the concept of human, was almost atomized, almost not a social. So the politics of dignity has also limitations. So Charles Taylor proposes a theory of politics of difference or politics of recognition. That you have to recognize that honor is not going to work, the concept of dignity is not going to work, the politics of recognition. You have to recognize each other because that is the more important thing in the multiculturalism and our communitarianism. Second thinker who has also made a remarkable contribution in politics of multiculturalism is Bhikkhu Parekh. And Bhikkhu Parekh is slightly different from Will Kimlicka and Charles Taylor. And we'll come to the Will Kimlicka and Charles Taylor. And Bhikkhu Parekh suggests that there is serious limitations in both in Kemlika and Charles Taylor, and his two important books are very important. Rethinking Multiculturalism, Cultural Diversity and Political Theory was an important contribution in this regard. And second book was New Politics of Identity in 2008. His title is Rethinking Multiculturalism. There is a multiculturalism before him. And of course, Kimlicka and Charles Taylor were important contributors. What Bhikkhu Parekh does, he says that in liberalism there is a serious problem. So we have to develop a framework called dialogical framework. So Bhikkhu Parekh proposes dialogical framework, which is very crucial and important to understand contemporary society. And he says that there are and he says that to have dialogical framework or multicultural society, he says that we have to depart from certain traditions within liberalism. One tradition is moral monism. That moral monism is an important tradition in liberalism. You don't appreciate others' life, and you understand difference deviation. So moral monism has to go, according to Bhikkhu Parekh, if we have to make society really multicultural society. Even he says that there is a theory of pluralism, but the theory of pluralism is also problematic because it is based on certain fallacies like holism, distinctiveness, positivist and historist dichotomy, ethnicization of culture. Somebody cannot be part of plural society, somebody can be part of plural society, cultural determinism and cultural autonomy. Bhikkhu Parekh is also critiquing John Rawls, and he says that John Rawls ignores culture in his schema of a theory of justice, and he also uh, updating two important thinkers, Charles Taylor and Will Kemlicka. Charles Taylor's schema, the important thing is that there is a hierarchy of rights in Will Kemlicka. Sorry, not Charles Taylor, Will Kemlicka. And what is the equality hierarchy of rights? National minorities have given more rights than the ethnic groups or migrants because they can form self-government, but migrants can't form self-government. Bhikkhu Parekh says that no, you have to give equal cultural rights to all in place of hierarchy of rights of Kemlicka. Second, in place of politics of recognition, and Bhikkhu Parekh points out that worth is the important concept. Worth, human worth, equal worth. So worth maybe not honor, worth is not dignity, worth is more than honor and dignity, and it is not even essentialization of culture. The worth is a very important factor. So this is the third thinker, Bhikkhu Parekh, which became very important in terms of contribution to the multiculturalism. Fourth important thinker, and I'm trying to give you a picture of multiculturalism, and this is an exercise of mapping out various philosophers and political theorists who have contributed a lot on multiculturalism, because there is nothing called the theory of multiculturalism. There are theories of multiculturalism. There's some connection, there's some departure. So for a very good research purpose, research on multiculturalism, from the point of multiculturalism, one has to engage with the various streams. Fourth is James Tooley. James Tooley is an important person, and his book, 1995 book, is a very important. And the book is Strange Multiplicity. And he talks about constitutionalism in age of diversity. So James Tooley becomes very important in fourth as a fourth thinker. So what is his importance? He talks about reconstruction of modern constitutionalism, and he proposes that all modern constitution has to be reconstructed, and the reconstruction is able to accommodate a greater variety of cultural traditions. Without reconstruction of modern constitutionalism, it is difficult to accommodate a greater variety of cultural traditions. So this is James Tooley. Fifth is then we'll go to the critique. But fifth is important thinker, and his uh, uh, Chandan Kukathas, and Chandan Kukathas is important person, and his book, The Liberal Archipelago: The Theory of Diversity and Freedom, from Oxford University Press, 2003, was an important contribution in multiculturalism. Chandan Kathas talks about multiculturalism within liberal framework, and he says that tolerance is an important concept. If, if you have to sustain a society as a multiculturalist society, the tolerance is important factor. And he proposes a theory of good society. Good society is important, which protects freedom of association. So, what is important? Chandan Kukathas is as follows, that in place of autonomy, he places association more important in multicultural society. Because in the name of autonomy, there can be various practices which are not modern, which can be considered illiberal, which are not good for the human beings or individual rights. So he says that multiculturalism is important in terms of protection of freedom of association rather than autonomy. But he says that there are three challenges of multiculturalism, and these challenges are religion, education, and children. So suppose religion is whether religion should be reformed or not. The question, because once you recognize culture and religion as absolute domain, as a cultural rights, how to bring reform in religion? Then education. What education should be given to many people? Suppose the various fundamentalist groups in various countries says that they want to teach students their ancient mode of teaching, which has nothing, which may have no value in a contemporary time. Orthodoxies, fundamentalism can be taught to the students. So multiculturalism has to respond to education. And what about children? Suppose some society says that we don't want to send our children to school. That's not right. So these three questions are important in multicultural discourse. Actually, there are four important critiques of multiculturalism and all these five variants of multiculturalism. And the most important critique would come from liberal welfarists. And liberal welfarists would say that, and the Brian Berry is the important person. Brian Berry. And Brian Berry wrote a book, Culture and Equality, an egalitarian critique of multiculturalism. He says that there is a lot of scope of within liberalism. So he says that I mean multiculturalism is problematic, but liberalism can solve lots of problems. According to Brian Berry, multiculturalism is inconsistent with the liberalism and respect for liberal values. Therefore, he says that it should be rejected. One argument, there are three arguments Brian Berry proposes. One argument is that liberal theory already respects various people. There is a respect for individuals in liberalism. It means that respecting individual is also respecting their cultures. It is not that you are respecting individual and rejecting their culture. It is not possible within liberalism. So when you respect individual, you are already respecting individual culture. Second, liberalism already values diversity, and the diversity in form of choices is already available to individuals and their culture. So what is the need of multiculturalism politics? Third is that liberalism gives very important a distinction that is called public and private distinction. And he says that there is already state non-intervention in private domain, that is the domain of culture, belief, practices, religion. So, what is the point of to bringing multiculturalism that is already there within multicultural liberal discourse? This is one of the important critique, which can be called as liberal welfareist critique within. There are lots of critiques, but what I'm trying to say or suggest that these are the some of the pointers, some of the important pointers which would tell us there are lots of critique of multiculturalism as well. Second critique is very important. The second critique comes from gender, multiculturalism and gender. Two important theorists, and they have devoted a lot of time to understand what is the position of women in multiculturalism, gender, how multiculturalism is addressing gender questions, multiculturalism. And the one of the important theorists was Suzanne Moller-Okin. Susan Moller Okin, and there's a book we all should read. That book is incredibly very good book. Is multiculturalism bad for women? This book is there available. Was published by Princeton University Press, where you have lots of arguments and articles. And Susan Moller Okin says that multiculturalism has to answer. I mean that if there is a protection for groups whose practices are sexist and highly disadvantageous and harmful to women. So can we approve various practices of various groups which are harmful to women? And see, and the book was this book had a lot of important articles which brings forth the serious concerns of gender in multiculturalism, like for example, Suzanne Moller Okin, Joshua Cohen, Matthew Howard, Martha C. Nussbaum. They're all addressing very serious concerns within the multicultural discourse. There's another thinker, feminist writers. The feminist writers. Another important feminist writer is Katha Pollitt. Katha Pollitt is says that whose culture we are trying to defend in multiculturalism or in name of culture. Whose culture is this? And this article is also part of this. The book is multiculturalism bad for women? And Katha Pollitt says that generally in its demand for equality for women, feminism and all feminists would say that we have to oppose virtually every culture on this earth. So feminism, it is important to oppose every culture on earth. And multiculturalism demands respect for all cultural traditions. But feminism would say that we have to interrogate and challenge all cultural traditions. So there is a diversion, there is a conflict, because feminists would say that all cultures have to be interrogated. The cultures can't be taken as it is, and very good in itself. Culture has to be interrogated, because if I borrow the terms of Judith Butler, the performativity of gender has been performed through cultures and with idioms and symbols of cultures. So this is the second critique of multiculturalism. Third important critique of multiculturalism comes from question of indigenous people. And remember that I discourse on multiculturalism had started in various countries which were colonized. Like, the debate of multiculturalism had started in the United States of America, then Canada, and various New Zealand, Australia, and so there are lots of indigenous people. What happened to them? This indigenous claim would be that please do not recognize us. Don't give us only independent status that, okay, you have a distinct culture. But we demand that there should be rectification for past injustices. If there is a no rectification of past injustices in any country, then there is no purpose of multiculturalism. Fourth critique is a very serious critique, and the fourth critique of multiculturalism would come from important. It comes from Marxism, and Marxism says that there are three important thinkers. There can be there are many, but I'm just focusing on three. One is Zizek. Zizek is calling multiculturalism as the cultural logic of multinational capitalism. Zizek is giving a theory that multiculturalism is nothing but the cultural logic of multinational capitalism. What is what is the basis of this argument? If we are citing Zizek, Zizek says that this is the ideal form of ideology of global capitalism, that is multiculturalism. So in any capitalism country or capitalist country, you will find the celebration of ideology that is of global capitalism, that is a multiculturalism. This is the same position. This is the, and he says that this is the same attitude where a dominant culture will recognize, or colonizers used to treat colonized people as native, should be carefully studied, there should be respect. So Zizek says that this is a problematic, this is a very anthropological, multiculturalism becomes a very anthropological case. Because if you look at various colonizers, they are coming to colonial country, and they were saying that, oh, they are a very they interesting culture. They are very interesting culture and should be studied carefully. They should be respected. Zizek is critiquing multiculturalism for making culture as an essential aspect of life, whereas he says that material or a mode of production debate has been given miss, and that has not been addressed. And this important article is available on New Left Review. Second important person is Jagman Bauman. Bauman is important, and his book is a very important book, 2011, Culture in a Liquid Modern World. And this was published by Quality Press, Cambridge University. And he says that the fact that any struggle for recognition is doomed to failure so long as it is not supported by the practice of redistribution. So Bowman says that recognition is important, and multicultural and diversity is a very, very important factor for modern life. But the story should not end there. Along with recognition, there should be redistribution. Otherwise, capitalism will celebrate, will engage in a culture and celebration of culture, but it will not give. So the diversity will be promoted, but poverty will be also promoted. Tension towards poverty will be missed in the name of cultural essentialization. Nancy Fraser is also important person who she says that recognition and redistribution has to be combined. Of course, recognition is important, but recognition has to be combined with the redistribution. So the concern in a Marxism vis-a-vis multiculturalism is that cultural idioms also to critique capitalism, which is a very important. Otherwise, you will have diverse kind of diversity, but you will have also multi-level of poverty. So Marxism exposes difference between multicultural society. There has to be absolute defense and guarantee of multicultural society, diverse society. But multiculturalism engage with them. That multiculturalism is important discipline, important method. It could break the serious limitation of liberal political theory. So multiculturalism was important because it broke the limitations of liberal political theory, where homogenization was there, but it was never recognized. Homogenization was there, but it was never recognized. The structural operation of the state and the capitalist induced violence, which is equally important when we understand culture and violence. Thank you so much for this invitation, and we can engage with some more question on multiple. Hello, hello. Hello.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर.
Thank you. Thank you.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप ये सारी चीज़ों को बताया, सारी चीज़ों को. और कहा जाता है कि व्याख्यान तभी सफल माना जाता है जब वो दिमाग पे चोट करे. तो सर सच में कहीं न कहीं चोट हुए हैं. इसका प्रमाण ये है कि बहुत से प्रश्न आए भी हैं. तो मैं चाहूँगा सर, मैं उन प्रश्नों को मैं जो मैं रिपीट करता हूँ, क्योंकि जो है कि बहुत से प्रश्न आए हैं और आपसे ही पूछे गए हैं. और फिर हम सोनाली मैम से भी जुड़ना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि उनसे भी कुछ प्रश्न पूछे गए हैं. तो मैं जो है उन प्रश्नों को, उन क्वेश्चंस को अभी रिपीट करता हूँ सर.
ओके, मैं क्या प्रश्नों को लिख लूं ताकि मुझे आंसर देने में रहेगा, या क्या कैसे करें?
मैं बोल देता हूँ सर.
हाँ, ठीक ठीक, आप बोलिए.
Sir, your question is that has Indian Constitution have elements of multiculturalism?
Okay, one by one. I think Indian Constitution recognizes group rights, and group rights are important part of Indian Constitution, because there you have the Indian Constitution recognizes rights of minorities, not only religious but cultural and ethnic and other minorities. So Indian Constitution gives scope to diversity and scope to multiculturalism. Uh, and this this is there. This is there. The Indian Constitution does recognize.
Okay. Sir, next question.
Group rights are there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is that how to we identify minorities with regards
'89, '88, '89, '90 onwards. But one thing is there, particularly Hindu Muslim chapter, and the chapter is a very crucial when all are becoming for each other. So and the interesting point in Hind Swaraj is this, that Gandhi is not giving importance to Hindu over Muslim and Muslim over Hindu. all have equal rights in political community in his vision of Swaraj. So in that way, we try to construct Gandhi's engagement with the diversity and multiculturalism. Yes, but as a discipline, this discipline or this query emerged in 1980s, 89 on.
नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन सुन पा रहे हैं सर?
हाँ
हेलो
बिल्कुल सुन पा रहे हैं.
जी सर,
हाँ बिल्कुल सुन पा रहे हैं.
क्योंकि प्रश्नों की कई झड़ियां लगी हैं, कई लोगों ने जो है कि प्रश्न
कोई
इस
बात
समय
नहीं.
तो सर, व्हाट इज द मल्टीकल्चरलिज्म इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ अम्बेडकर?
Multiculturalism in the context of Ambedkar. I think Ambedkar is the multiculturalism. I mean, there are two aspects. I think Ambedkar is he will be. I mean, there's a one philosopher called John Dewey. Fine. John Dewey was an important thinker to understand. I mean, of course, Ambedkar. So there's a concept in Devi and the Ambedkar associated life. So they envisage democracy in the form of associated life. This associated life was multilingual, multicultural, and multiple. So there was a plurality. There was a right discourse in Ambedkar. So Ambedkar is very much defending diversity when he proposes diversity as an associated life. So he emerges one of the important defenders. And of course, if you read constituent assembly debates and particularly on various articles and fundamental rights vis-a-vis minority rights, Ambedkar's intervention in this area is very important. Two things are there. Cultural diversity affecting decision making. If you have made decision already, then the cultural diversity should affect. But if you are arriving to decision making through cultural diversity, then cultural diversity will not affect. If you think that you can or I can or any individual or social group or dominant group can suggest or dictate terms of policy making for everyone, that is very erroneous and wrong assumption. So if decision making has come through diversity and diversity led politics, then people will support that decision making. Otherwise, decisions and diversity will go in two different directions.
ओके सर, बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद। हमारे चूँकि प्रश्न आते ही जा रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारी भी कुछ समय सीमा की मर्यादा है, तो मैं जो है कि सर आपका बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद सर, आपने हमें समय दिया और ये कहीं न कहीं आपके व्याख्यान की सार्थकता इसी बात में सिद्ध होती है सर, कि बराबर जो है प्रश्न आ रहे हैं। लोग कहीं न कहीं जब दिमाग पे जो है कि जब जोर दिया जाता है, कहीं न कहीं जब दिमाग की कुछ नसें को जो है कुछ कहा जाता है, तो जब नसों को जो है कहीं तनाव मिलता है, तो कुछ प्रश्न निकल के आते हैं। तो सर बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद।
हाँ,
आपने
नहीं
जी,
मैं एक बात कहना चाहूंगा कि अभी मेरे को प्राइवेटली वो आपको आना चाहिए था, 15-20 क्वेश्चंस आए हैं,
जी।
20-25 और प्राइवेटली।
हाँ,
तो
हाँ।
मैं ये करूंगा कि वो आपको सब फॉरवर्ड कर दूंगा। कभी और अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगा तो हम और लोगों से बाद में एंगेज करते हैं।
हाँ, जी सर, हम सोचेंगे हम चाहेंगे कि नेक्स्ट टाइम जो है कि हम एक फेसबुक लाइव का कार्यक्रम रखेंगे आपका, जिसमें जो है कि हम ये क्वेश्चन आंसर पे
ठीक
जो
है,
वहाँ पे आएँगे वो चीज़ें जो है, क्योंकि प्रश्न आपको भी आए हैं, इधर भी आए हैं। तो अब मैं बहुत-बहुत
बिल्कुल।
धन्यवाद सर, आप जो हमसे जुड़ने के लिए और
थैंक यू,
इतने अच्छे
थैंक यू,
व्याख्यान के लिए। अब मैं प्रोफ़ेसर सोनाली सिंह मैम से जुड़ना
थैंक
चाहूँगा
यू।
क्योंकि उनसे भी कुछ प्रश्न आए हुए हैं। तो प्रोफ़ेसर सोनाली सिंह मैम, योगेश जी, सोनाली सिंह मैम को अनम्यूट किया जाए। मैम सुन पा रही हैं? मैम सुन पा रही हैं? अ, योगेश जी, मैम की माइक को अनम्यूट किया जाए। योगेश जी सुन पा रहे हैं?